We've talked about grief quite a bit in the past on the show, but not so much about rage, which feels like such an important part of this conversation because, as you point out, they kind of mirror each other. So I'm also kind of curious about this for personal reasons because, in addition to feeling so much grief and brokenheartedness from learning about one tragedy and one heartbreak after another, I also feel a lot of anger and rage
Yes.
for what's happening in the world. And I think sometimes I surprise myself in terms of how that pops up and shows up in my life, in terms of maybe feeling irritable or impatient or honestly sometimes just wanting to like yell and scream at something.
Yeah.
So I'm curious when you talk about sacred rage, what is sacred about rage or what kinds
Mhm.
of rage are sacred?
Yeah. Yeah. So sacred rage, that's just like my favorite topic. So I always have to like in my mind because I just want to go on. So feel free to stop me here. But let me say that sacred rage is the type of primal, embodied, somatic, healthy,
Hmm.
whatever we consider normal to be air quotes around that emotion, right? That we're working towards being in relationship with. Yeah. And I think the difference between rage that is just like kind of blind and out there and hurting and not thinking about anyone else is that it surprises us. It pulls the wool over our eyes. Um, it stops us in our tracks. It makes us sick afterwards. And we've often hurt ourselves and or somebody else as well. Um, I think usually it starts there for some
Mhm.
people. For some people, they've had one, two, three, or more experiences of having big emotion like rage come out because they feel that there is an injustice or they feel like they've been slighted or hurt or there is a feeling of, oh my gosh, no. It's usually around injustice, to be honest. Not
Mhm.
always, but generally, like rage is about injustice. But the thing that makes it sacred is that little kernel of conscientiousness around it. And the little kernel of saying, I'm paying attention to this. A little, that piece where we're willing to be in relationship with it. Yeah. And so rage, sacred rage, is the love child of ancestral trauma, grief that has been suffocated, pushed
Mhm.
down collectively, and shame. Right. And part of what I love doing is helping people realize that there's nothing wrong with them or their child or whoever, that no, just wielding this rage willy nilly is highly problematic, right? To their bodies, to their nervous systems, to themselves, and to people around them. And wielding this rage without understanding that there's a root and a shadow and an old ancestral lineage is very, very, very dangerous. And
Mhm.
so I think what makes it sacred is that we're paying attention, that we're giving it attention. Sometimes I like to say that that kind of sacred rage, there's like and again, if we could reclaim these words for a second, right? And not attach them to systems and structures that we have had experiences with. But like, I think that sacred rage is sexy. I think sacred rage is holy in the purest
Mhm.
sense. Like, it is a clear response and conduit from our bodies, from people that came before us, our blood or collective ancestors, to what is happening in the present moment. And is usually saying, not again, not now,
Mhm.
not not on our watch, or hey, we remember this, or ooh, this doesn't feel good. Ooh, time out, time out, time out. Right. And it's usually like tapping incessantly on our natural given intuition. Right. And so where anger is very much a feeling, right? Anger could just be all about us or projecting and all of that. But rage is something really, really quite special, to be honest. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we're demonizing it.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we're just like, I need to stop this rage, or my child is kicking and screaming and crashing out. They're acting out. Please fix them. But my first thing when I was working with children and adolescents, without ever really understanding truly rage work until I started working with Ruth King, because I was struggling with rage, because my father struggled with rage and still does. And I think one always could have a struggle, right? I could crash out once a year to things that I'm like, oh, there's like the shame hangover is what I call it. Where afterwards you're like, guess I could have done that different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, ooh. And then you have to ask yourself, is it that other people wanted you to do it different because your realness and breath made them uncomfortable? Right? Or is it that there was harm? And then that's a whole other, it's like chapter 5, right? You know? But first, like, this rage is telling you something. This rage is saying, no, 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 no. Something here is off, or my boundary has been deeply, deeply violated. And so when we are watching or experiencing the threat of deportation, of martial law, of not having agency on our bodies, for our bodies, the thought of not having the kind of care and access to medical and mental health treatment that people need, to our elders not being cared for, to our land being exploited over and over and over. I think it is totally natural, normal, and healthy to have an intense reaction to behaviors that seek to squash resources that should be utilized and that we should be able to share and have and prosper with. And I think my favorite example are the ecosystems of nature, of other sentient beings, right? Right? Like that, you know, a mother bear will protect their cubs, right? There'll be rage, whether or not we understand it to be a threat. You know, get near a bear's cubs, we will experience wrath, right? We will experience the same thing with whether it's a duck or, you know, like they will fiercely protect their young. And so in that way, if we have been working towards understanding that we are siblings, family, extended people, you know, that this tree in front of me is an extension of me. When that tree is threatened, when that family across the miles is threatened, it is natural for my body, mind, and spirit to experience a, you know, this whoa, 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 whoa. And so that's the first thing I want to say, that we have a right to our rage. And the more that we can be in relationship to it, the more sacred I think it can become. And the less rather that it will swallow us whole as a human. I also believe that our rage, in order for it to be sacred, deserves time and space and energy. And that kind of means that we're not consistently at a place where we're trying to push it down, swallow it, and ignore it, or feel bad for it, embarrassed about it, right? Where we see a child tantrum and we think, how can we give them space, right? You know, really, really quick story. I remember being in maybe a Trader Joe's or something a couple of years ago. I was minding my business. I just came from a hard workout. I was tired. I was hungry. I wasn't about it. I was thinking about something that was like irritating me. I was in a bad mood. And I'm in the grocery store, and the child with the mother in front of me has an absolute meltdown. And I'm like, so I close my eyes. I'm like, because in that moment, it's like, you know, just normal everyday things, right? And I quickly changed my tune when I saw that the mom, what I can assume to be a woman of color, was like, no, no, no. I could see the embarrassment, I could see the shame. I could see she started to get anxious. The child continued to escalate further. I hear her saying, I know, I just got to pay for this. Then you could have it. You know, it was like a simple, and the child's like, oh, right. And then everybody's turning around. The manager comes over and is like, oh, you could take him outside. We'll hold your cart for you. And I just couldn't take it anymore. And I stepped in and I'm like, hey. And I looked at her and I'm like, would it be all right if I get everybody to chill the fuck out? So let's say that. And she was like, yes. And I was like, I'm a therapist. I'm like, but you're the mother. And she's like, no, it's okay. And I was like, can everyone actually just like give her a minute? Because I have a big mouth, as we know. And I was like, can everyone like give a human minute to a mom and a child? We've all been here, even if we don't have children. I don't have children. I've been on the floor rolling around in the middle of a Macy's with my mother. You know, like, can everybody turn around and ignore the behavior so the child doesn't continue to escalate? Please. I was so annoyed. I was annoyed at them, not the child. You know, some people kept looking and they weren't going to listen to me, but some other people like literally turned their backs and like got it. Like, and they were like, oh yeah, you know, we're going to keep doing this. The child is going to keep, right? Because there's an audience and now they're embarrassed. And then, you know, it's just like typical child psychology. And she was like, thank you. And she's like kind of crying because you could tell she's overwhelmed. The cart is stocked. Like it's, and the child stopped in about like 45 seconds. It wasn't immediate, but in like 45 seconds. And she's like, thank you. Like, thanks for not being annoyed. I was like, no, girl, like I was so annoyed. And then I realized, like, that wasn't, it's not it. You know, so I bring this up to say, are we not all just children? Right? Like, are we not all just like desiring some semblance of somebody somewhere, some adult, even if we're adults somewhere, that can stop the shit that is killing and harming us, right? Don't we all, right? Like a little part of us. Don't we all just want someone, something, somewhere to like make it better, to make it stop, right? And I'm not saying that we should all turn around, but sometimes we deserve to crash out. Sometimes, you know, we need to have that moment and for someone else to be like, yeah, I'm witnessing you and it's okay. And I still love you, even though this happened. And you're right to feel this way. This shouldn't be happening. You know, we shouldn't be treating our children like labor. There shouldn't be children that are coming home from school not knowing where their mother is and they've been deported, right? There shouldn't be husbands, wives, lovers that are crying for their loved one as, and you know, this fake ass law enforcement, you know, this military, this Stapo is like pulling them away, you know, and so we deserve to crash out a little bit.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to a person, I'm the one that would say your body wants it and deserves it, and your ancestral material is literally screaming out for us to remember that this is not so far-fetched, that this has happened in some way, shape, or form, that colonization has had an impact on almost all of us and continues to, and that we need to wake up, like clap, clap, wake up, get up and do something different, or we'll get what we've always gotten.
Yeah. So it feels like it's good for rage to sometimes be, or it necessarily needs to be expressed through crash outs or even just tantrums, whatever that looks like for each of us. And also there are sometimes when rage does become destructive to ourselves or to other people. And I wonder if part of that comes from the fact that so often this system that perpetuates injustice doesn't actually hold the perpetrators to account. And it doesn't, it actually rewards a lot of those behaviors and actions of exploitation, of harm, of extraction, and so on. So it's like we're not able to directly kind of address the source of the injustice that we're feeling, because sometimes it's kind of abstracted, sometimes it's systemic, so there's not like a neat thing to, target. And at the same time, we're often told to suppress all of these
Yeah.
emotions and
Yeah.
not given the proper space to tend to them. So I'm learning at least that these emotions are healthy and good to feel and express. And maybe when they get suppressed, when they become stagnant in our bodies, they can manifest in something that is destructive to ourselves and to other people. So then I'm left wondering, like, what does it mean to tether our personal individual rage to something that is maybe more mycelial and collective, to know that we're not alone in carrying these containers? And then
Yeah.
also, how do we alchemize that rage
Yeah.
into something that can really heed to its sacred calling?
I love it. Yeah. Yes, yes, and triple yes to everything. Amen to everything you're saying. I have found, and myself and the thousands of people that I've served and worked with and been in community and organized with, that one of the most destructive forms of rage are the one in which it continues to go unconscious. Does that make
Mm.
sense? Like where we kid ourselves into thinking we're over something, where and I want to say kid ourselves. Let me retract that a little bit and bring it back. It may feel like we're kidding ourselves, but sometimes it's protective,
Mm.
right? Sometimes it's just like straight survival. And sometimes that straight survival really ends up harming relationships, ends up harming us, ends up harming our view of the world. It gets solidified and stuck, in the body, in the mind, in the personality. Because as we know, repetition is the language of trauma, right? Repetition is one of the languages of trauma anyway. And when the body is like, oh, this kept me pretty safe last time. Yeah, I was misunderstood, but I was safe. Like, or yeah, I shouldn't do that, but I was safe, right? So it's really hard to get out of those repetitive stages. And the thing is that we are connected, that even if we tried, it would be very, 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 very difficult to not pick up on what's going on around us. Very, very, very difficult. So even when we're like, oh, I have great, like for those, like even myself, like, nope, I got to put up some energetic boundaries, or I've got to do a little bit of work here. Or I've got to, this is too much that I'm taking in. It can help, but there's still a certain amount coming through, right? And that's because on some level, you're absolutely right that half of what we are so enraged about is something so abstract and so out of our control. And yet it's something that is vibrating, I would say, in every single one of us. And that's that there is a part abandonment, there is part rejection there. There is part of being ripped and taken from home, or being forced to migrate from home, even if people think it's their own ideas, right? Why do people leave their homelands? Right? Why do they need, air quotes, a better opportunity or a better life? Right? Like why these things happen, because systems of control, right? Colonize, manipulate, ethnically cleanse, and harm individuals. And so this rage lays dormant oftentimes. Even when we're putting on a smiley face, I'm a really happy person. I don't get it like, oh no, I control my emotions. Oh, I let it out through my music, through my dance. And I would say to that, some of the most intense forms of rage I've ever seen on retreat are individuals that were perpetual people pleasers and caretakers.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Right? Like, and we all gave them space, and it was like, let it out. Yeah, let it out. Um, so do you ever notice, like, if someone has a really big reaction, whether tears or grief or yelling, or that usually other people around will get emotional as well? That's that
Mhm.
mycelium, that's that connection, right?
Mm.
That there is a part of me that can tap in to what you're feeling because I felt it too. And I know that that gets minimized, and but it's so real. And although I don't have research for this next part that I'm about to say, I've said this for a really long time. After doing therapy for 20 something years, what I saw over and over and over is that folks that were not at all in touch with their rage, right, internalized it to a T all the time. And those were the folks consistently coming and having panic attacks, anxiety disorders, right? Constantly internalizing it. Right. And there are folks that are like, no, I'm enraged and I'm also anxious. My first response is, how are you working with this rage? Right? Whose rage is it? Are you giving yourself an opportunity to name your rage? Are you engaging with your rage on a daily basis? And so the question to the transmuting piece, for me, it's really simple. Something that we want to have a better relationship and transform, we don't just bring it up every once in a while. Right? We're consistent. Right? If I am dating a person and I like them, then I'm going to respond to their text messages. I'm going to make some space and talk to them on the phone or walk in the park with them, right? Or whatever one does these days, right? So the reality is it's the same thing with rage. My rage is my best friend, hands down. And I have very close inner circle, and my rage will tell me over and over and over when something is, let's just say, off. When something or someone is unhealthy for me, when someone is not telling the truth, I can feel it in my body. And for Jennifer, I start to feel agitation because I don't feel agitated all the time for no reason, like real agitation. So what I invite people to do is create a shelf, an altar, a special sacred place, a little somewhere in your home, even if it's in your car, and designate it to that sacred rage, right? To the rage that you want to build a relationship with. And in that little special place, you can put a picture of yourself when you were most silenced, right? Or when you were most holding in that rage. Usually for a lot of us, it's around 8, 7, 10, right? Where we start to, oh no, I don't like that flavor. Well, you're going to eat it or you're not going to eat anything. Or that's not fair. You can't, life's not fair. Tough, right? Like, that hit, or literal loss, or literal physical violence, or literal sexual abuse and violence, right? Like there's these spaces and places. And so rage work is shadow work, right? It's shadow work. It's parts work. It's also loving kindness work, right? Because the ask on this little special place is that, you might put a lollipop there because little you wasn't allowed to have sweets. You might put a picture of yourself when you're most windblown and enjoying the beach or the boardwalk. You might put a picture of a fruit or colors that remind you of what your rage ancestors really might want you to know. And every day, even if it's 5 to 10 seconds, the invitation is to acknowledge, to nod. What's up? Every day. Now this sounds basic, right? But oftentimes it's the basic stuff that we're not doing. Oftentimes it's the basic stuff that it just feels so silly or so ordinary that why would I do that? And my response to that is because there's a part of you that's dying to be seen and witnessed and known. And that's what that rage is. Rage is our collective underbelly, right? And all it really wants is for you to be safe.
Yeah.
For other people to be safe, right? And so anger is if like there's a block goal, if something's difficult, something's not going your way. I'm angry at something relationally, but rage, right? Rage is usually never about what's right in front of us. That's just boop. It just touched the button and it was already there. Now, if you're every day saying, imagine I'm looking at my special place or my altar, my rage sacred space. And when I don't have time to journal, or I don't have time to sit into it, or I don't have time to dance it out, because you can do any of these things to honor it, right? Oh, I'm going to put on a rage song. This rage
Mm.
song sounds pretty sad, but this is what my body is desiring. I'm going to let myself cry for the duration of this song, sing to this person that I miss, and feel pissed off and mixed feelings and all of it, right? Or I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say to myself, sacred rage, what would you like me to know today?
Mm.
And just let it come up. Because what rage also does that I could promise you, and I'm a person of my word, is that give it a few weeks, maybe even a month or two, depends how far down we've repressed it. It would also really, really expand our intuition.
Mm.
We'll start, right? Because our rage is no longer something like, shh, get in the back.
Mm.
Gosh, oh my God, it's no longer whatever the emote, like, oh, I'm embarrassed, or oh no, I can't get mad. Can't get mad. Calm down. Calm down. Now it's like, whatever you gotta say inside, right? And then in your mind's eye or physically, if you don't care what people think, look over at your rage metaphorically and like, I got everything I need to know. How do I need to respond to the situation now? Right. And maybe you do decide to respond with, don't ever do that shit again. Right. Valid. Or maybe you respond with, we can't talk right now. I'm so enraged. I will come back to the shit. Right. Or
Mm.
maybe it's crying and sobbing and saying, I'm so fucking pissed. Anyone, right? Anyone ever, or hot tears where you can't get it out? That's rage too. Right. Like,
Mm.
so, because really, rage is about you and your nervous system. It's about your fight, flight, freeze, right? It is instinctual. Some of us shut down, some of us puff out. You're not going to do that, right? And some of us, like, please, like, and none of them are wrong. And none of them are something that you can like force. They just simply are. And so I'll frequently say to folks, we love rage as a society in theory, but we don't really love rage,
Mm.
right? And that's something I've often, some of my friends would say, like, yo, people love Black and brown folks, like they love our culture, but they don't love us,
Mm.
right? And it's like a similar energy. Like we love to pontificate about it, we love to talk about it. But when someone in front of us is making us feel uncomfortable, because they're enraged, they're not punching, they're not hitting you, we're not saying like, but you're feeling an emotional unsafety, then what do we need to do also to orient? Maybe that is leaving and saying, you deserve this, but I can't. I'll be back. Or
Mm.
I'll call you later. Or it's like, you don't get to talk to me like that. I'm going to freaking leave. Or it's, I'm going to sit here and I can hold this space for you, but you have to lower your voice by decibels. Right? Like there's ways that we can negotiate when the big emotion comes up. Right? I've even been able to say to someone in an organizing space that it was like an argument and it was about to be really big, and it was very personal to these two people. And I said, may I jump in? May I jump in? Because they were screaming, right? Like, may I jump in? May I jump in? And somebody was like, yes, yes. And I'll never forget that, because still there was a part of both of them that still had a kernel of respect and love for the other.
Mm.
Even if it was like, I'm going to, right? It was like there's a certain part of them that felt violated, each of them, and it was like, okay. Can we come back to this? Or can we this? Or can we even scream and tell the other what we're feeling? Would this be okay with both of you so you can get it out? Can we go over there? And we quickly did it. And I was like, okay, here's what's going to happen afterwards. Afterwards, you're going to go with so-and-so. You're going to go with so-and-so. And you're going to cry, scream, kick dirt. And my favorite thing to do for someone is make sure there's an aftercare plan.
Mm.
And that's the only reason I am not a huge fan of, how did I say this? I'm not a fan of rage rooms. Typical ones.
Mm.
Unless folks do the labor and the work of ensuring that there is aftercare set up. Here's why. Number one, you have to pay for like usually every little thing that you hit and smack. 2, when you just get started, you want more. So it's not like fully expelled and
Mm.
released. But 3, you're walking away like, oh yeah, I think I feel better. Right. But there's a part of you that might want to break down and cry.
Mm.
Normal. Rage and grief are besties. They're cousins. They reside together. Where one is, the other is close behind. Right? Where one is, the other is right there behind it. And those people that feel like they can be with grief more, they usually really need to feel their rage. And those that can be with rage a little bit more and have a hard time being sad, air quotes, usually need to be in that really puddly, exhausted, sad space. And so it's kind of like looking your fear in its face. Yeah. And so afterwards, I like to say, like, I might call my best friend and say, hey, you think like in 45 minutes, we can like even though you're at your apartment and I'm at my apartment, we can like watch blank together on TV and just talk and like whatever, like
Mm.
talk and act like we're watching this together. Or do you think we can FaceTime and talk? Or do you think that you can come by and just like be on standby and throw a blanket around me like I'm a burrito and remind me why you like me and love me and why I'm lovable and why I deserve to be here? And if that's too much for me, I'll tell you. I do think that some of the onus is on us,
Mhm.
to make sure that there is something that makes us feel good. And sometimes we don't know what that is, but over time we start to get used to it and we build that muscle, like we're weightlifting, right?
Mhm.
Or like we're doing a new practice. We start, I have agency over my rage. My rage, like I said, is my best friend. Why? Because if I start to feel this particular feeling and I pull back a little bit, or like, I start to notice things in myself, and then something happens with my stomach, I end up clearing my throat. I lean forward. I notice little things in me when something is not in alignment for me or someone is not telling me the truth. Sometimes it's because they're not telling themselves the truth. That doesn't mean they're bad, air quotes. It
Mhm.
might mean it just doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't, something's not on point for me. And so all of this to say, step 1, befriend that rage. Get curious about it. Date your rage. That means like you get to set limits, you get to set boundaries. You don't have to talk to it every night, but you do need to get curious and lean in to create a space, a place, and a time where you will address your rage. If I'm running out, I'm looking at it. I look over at my little rage altar and I'm like, what do you need me to know today?
Mm.
What do you want me to know today? What would you like me to do today? Sometimes it's like, we need you to get a walk in, or I want you to lift or hit something really heavy, or it could be, oh, I'm thinking of so-and-so. You never followed up with them. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then when I talk to that person, maybe they're struggling, or maybe they're like, I missed you. I thought you didn't want to call me back. And I'm like, oh shit, right? Like it could be anything. It could be anything. But the invitation is to not judge it and to be your own curious social scientist, right? And while you're doing that, you can also journal that if you have space and time. Sure, you can meditate, but rage usually doesn't prefer stillness,
Mhm.
right? Rage is an embodiment of everything that has been stopped up and backed up, of
Mm.
silence, of hangings, of beheadings, of lies, of false treaties, right? Rage is there because there has been some breach of trust. And so rage wants to be shaken out. Rage wants to listen to a rock song, even if you don't normally rock out, right? Rage wants to be sobbed out while you're like,
Mhm.
like tapping on a body. Like rage is uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, right? I've seen people urinate on themselves, snot hanging off adults, right? And it's like, when I'm doing a rage retreat, I'm just there like, doop, doop, doop. You good. Keep going, right? Like, oh, you want to throw up? Here you go. No problem. I tell people that help me all the time, we don't have a reaction. We don't have a reaction to it, right? Because we don't need to add to the shame. We don't need to add to the stigma of, I urinated on myself. That's what needed to happen. You were so scared, that little particle in you, that child in you, right? So what? Wet yourself. You change.
Mm.
We'll
Yeah.
keep it safe. You'll change yourself. You'll clean yourself up. Like, that's a bodily function, just like rage is a fucking bodily function, right?
Yeah.
It's just, again, building that relationship so we're not popping off all the time. We're not losing our jobs or our best friends, or right, where we can begin to hold space for this really big, beautiful emotion and nod to it every day. Lift your head to it every day. Ask that question. What do you need? It might say ice cream. It might be quiet time with no one asking us for anything. It might be no social media, a social media fast for 3 days. Not because you want to check out and not care, but because your energy is so deeply intertwined with everyone and everything you're scrolling past that you don't even know where you start and where somebody else ends. Right? And maybe it's supposed to be that way, and maybe it's not.
Mm.
Right. I just have questions. I don't know. I'm still practicing,
Yeah.
the both and the expansion and the contraction the same way nature does.
Hmm.
Right. And rage, just like nature, right, has its fall, has its times where we have to hibernate and go within. That's humanity, right? Has its times where we need to pack on more weight and eat a little bit more and be by ourselves. Times where we come out and the flowers are out and we're feeling good, times where we're sweating it out and we're like not thinking about things. Rage deserves that as well, and rage has its seasons as well.
Mm. Wow. I felt so much through everything that you just shared. And I think it's important to emphasize, as you mentioned earlier, that there's a difference between knowing all of this in theory and through our intellectual mind versus knowing it with our bodies and actually practicing it and allowing others to practice and have space to express these things as well. And as we're starting to wind down our main conversation, I want to talk a little bit about this inner need for affirmation. I think there's a deeper part of us that wants validation, that wants affirmations. And I recently had the honor of interviewing Dr. Rupa Maria, a physician who was fired by UCSF for her advocacy for Palestinian liberation. And I think learning her story and the stories of so many others, and also feeling into my personal experiences, it just becomes quite clear that the colonial system outcasts people who don't follow its rules and who reject its value systems, right? It doesn't affirm us. We get fired, we lose sponsorships and
Yeah.
funding, we get
Yeah.
denied opportunities and access, we get punished in certain ways, we get smeared. Um, so I think it takes a really strong sense of kind of like a rootedness to be able to reframe all of these punitive consequences as kind of cracks for something else to emerge, to see like that this emergence is much bigger than the immediate rewards that I might get from the system, and that otherwise can feel so comforting and so seductive as well. And I know that there's no ethical purity amongst all of this, and people often have to have one foot in and one foot out to play a little bit of the game and then to kind of create more cracks for other ways. But having to navigate these constant rejections and punishments in different forms can still be very taxing to our souls and our bodies over time. And we're wired in certain ways to like want these validations too. So I guess I'm curious what you'd say in terms of like, what do we let guide and ground us and affirm us when it feels like so much of the world wants us to feel ashamed and crazy for our humanity and for like this deep cellular, like ancestral memory of who we are and what we might yearn for? Yeah, there's a lot there, but
So, if you can repeat the question one more time.
yeah, so just amidst it's kind of disorienting to have the system constantly reject us and
Yeah,
tell us that we're not good
yeah,
enough, we're not doing enough, we get punished for these things, um, all of these negative consequences of non-validation and rejections. Um, so how do we ground ourselves if we can't turn to those things as
yeah,
sources of guidance? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Great question. Yeah, um, and I adore Dr. Rupa. She's such a good human, and um, as someone who has recently been going through some doxing myself, and of my work, and what I can say is that, right, that energy is intended to silence us, exactly like you said. That energy is intended to um, really penalize the truth tellers. But
Mhm.
what is the one thing that deeply sets us free and allows us to relax and unwind and unfurl? And that's telling the truth. and and so that's what I would say is one of the things that gives me great reward. And one of the things that I think that we can do as a people is really allow ourselves to be in places and spaces where our whole entire self and truth is welcome. Yeah. Because colonial capitalism will continue to have us scared and afraid. Colonial capitalism will continue to say, oh, look, this is the problem. And if I can highlight Dr. Rupa, Dr. Mullan, Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. This one, right? If we could do this to them, imagine what we can do to you if you step out of line,
Mhm.
right? And the reality is that most of us, all of us, are everyday people that have feelings.
Mhm.
And all of us are just desiring for this deep sense of fucking like peace. So for me personally, for me, peace for me looks like people having clean running water.
Mhm.
Right? So I'm going to keep talking my shit, right? Because I was placed here to do that. And so my invitation, so I think on a clearer level, like what we can do to really balance is really become part of something larger. And that larger doesn't have to be 100 people. That doesn't have to be the most known network pushing up against fascism. It could literally be your neighborhood block, and you're figuring out how to clothe and feed and house everybody in a few months or weeks, when it becomes quite different. When everything changes, because we're being warned, we're being forewarned if you live in the States. Yeah. Oh, in terms of what's happening. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when,
Mhm.
right? And when that switch hits, because rights are already being taken away, people are already being locked up, deported, killed, harmed, assaulted, and detained, even if they're quote unquote American citizens. Whatever that means, is they're coming back into the country. These things are already occurring. And so for me, the only option is to what we did before we started, breathe into the fear,
Mm.
right? To feel it, to see it, to know that it doesn't have an opportunity to take me. And then each of us, this is where I think our rage shows up too, and our grief, right? Because for me, I get a little what, what did they say? When I was 16 years old, I saw some therapist, and she's like, "Oh, you have conduct disorder. You have antisocial tendencies." and and I laughed because at the time I cried, and I was like, "What do you mean? What are you trying to say?" Like how that fucked me up, right?
Mhm.
But now I'm just like, I have antisocial tendencies. I know, like meaning, like, yeah, fuck the system. Yeah, no, you don't get to pick us off and pull us apart. No, you don't get us to make us feel unsafe with everybody around us and question everybody around us. So my rage gets really big and goes, oh, good. Right now we can play. Right now we can put our rage where it deserves to be, at these systems and places, and we can tell everybody on a really loud stage that you've never been fucked up and crazy,
Mm.
right? That this is you trying to adjust to systems, structures, and educational brainwashing that never wanted you to thrive and be healthy and be in good relationship, right? Everything in your life has been commodified. And and I honor there are people like my best friend that say, oh no, when shit hits the fan, you just have to leave me. like leave me. Like, and we laugh about this, and I'm like, you're gonna get me killed because I'm never gonna leave you. You know, like she's like, you're gonna get us all killed. You know, she's just like, no, I'm too slow, or I'll this, or I'll, you know, like if the zombies come, just let them get me. And I'm like, well, there are much more real things that'll get you before zombies. That's number one. But I'm being a little facetious. But you see, humor is one of my tactics. Like humor and silliness and music. Like these are ways that I ground myself. Like being the rallier for all my friends and family is how I ground and take care of myself. And so I don't think there's a one way for anyone. I think that each of us have to figure out how to survive that which wants us destroyed. And we can help each other figure that out.
Yeah.
You know, we can help each other understand this. This is really important for me to say. I feel for years, many of us, not just myself, have been talking about the violence of colonization. We have been talking about the very carefully arranged arrangement of racial politics. Yeah. Like the arrangement of the divide and conquer, the arrangement of splitting apart Black Panthers, Yellow Fever, Brown Berets, right? Any of our people, right? Like the arrangement, the very purposeful arrangements in attacking Black Lives Matter folks, or trying to put Asian kin against Black kin, or brown folks against Black folk, right? Like these are all part of an arrangement. And a lot of us, including myself sometimes, have gotten so off on like knowing a lot of information and being whatever we understand this like smart to be. Yeah, that it's hard to know when to feel it. Yeah. And now is the time, in my humble opinion, that it's time to feel. It's time to like, okay, this is what colonization does. This is what racial capitalism does. This is what da 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 da. Right? So how do I take what has been, how do I say this? Give me a second. How do I take what has been up here in the head and intellectualized, and how do I gently, thoroughly, and consistently embody it? What does embodiment look like in the middle of societal collapse and change? And I don't think anybody has an answer, right? We have some of the greats that have gone through their own forms of societal collapse. We have some of the greats, that meaning beloved ancestors, collective, you know, ancestors that have written books, that have given talks, that have passed down wisdom. We understand that colonization, to me, causes insanity. Dr. Frederick Hinkling, may he rest in power, you know, passed away, I think it was 2021. And I only found out about Dr. Frederick Hinkling, who's an amazing Jamaican psychiatrist, right? That was doing a lot of work in Bellevue Hospital in Jamaica, talking about basically global decolonial mental health on world stages, right? Lots of people were released from Bellevue Hospital due to his and his colleagues' work around this sort of psychological, expressive arts form of historical movement and art, right? And therapy that they were doing, this mix. And I thought to myself, that's what helped me and my peer educators survive. We were doing, you know, we had our person do narrative therapy with us. We had a somatic component. We had a relational component. We had a learn intellectual component. We had and I would say that's exactly what we all need right now, is we all need a few pods or one pod, right? Shout out to Mia Mingus and pod mapping. She saved my life, right? We all need a pod or two or three, or as many as we can get, where we can start practicing healthy relationship. right? Or we've always been practicing healthy relationship. And I don't think this is a time that we always have to push ourselves really hard. But this is a time where we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And rage and grief are going to be riding with us, right and left hand. So what do we do with what we've always known now that we must embody it? And that is something that the West has a really hard time doing, is embodying.
Yeah.
Not only the president, I'm the client, right? Right. So I hope I answered your question. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, just these are unprecedented times. There's never been something like this in the course of human history. So I think it's okay to not know the answers and to feel it out as we go, and to maintain a humility amongst all of this too. But I just also want to say that I've personally been really impacted by your work, and I feel really inspired by your rawness, your realness, and your rootedness in everything that you share. So just wanted to personally share a big thank you. And as we're wrapping up here, Dr. Jen, I want to invite you to share any upcoming projects that you've been working on that you are excited to continue working on, and any final closing words of wisdom for us as Green Dreamers.
Yeah, thank you. Well, number one, organize, everybody. Organize whatever that looks like to you. Don't assume that it's not going to impact you or your family. And at the same time, part of that organizing is the joy. So that's and may we be rooted in our values, rooted in clarity, and rooted in a sense of love, right? It makes sense why the 60s and the 70s occurred to me when we come out of the 40s and the 50s in the States, right? Like, it makes a lot of sense why people were like, I just want to dance and, have consensual love and like find a way. And I say, let us do all of it now, all of it, right? Tend to the earth the way you would a sibling as well, right? Every day I name the trees around my house. I don't, I live in like kind of a city, and I'm definitely not in a suburb, and I'm definitely not in the countryside. So I try to go to the park. I just try to relish when things feel so overwhelming. I deeply relish in all of the phases, what animals go through on a consistent basis too. So allow yourself to find some peace within nature, and what's around us. And let's see, things that I'm working on. Well, I would say we're having a rage retreat pretty soon for women and non-binary folks. And there is a wait list for that. I've been taking my time because I can be a little bit of an annoying perfectionist. Virgo rising, Venus a Virgo, Mars a Virgo. And it's so sensitive. It just needs to be right. And, it needs to be right. And so I'm going to take my time and not rush the way colonial capitalism will have me rush. So there'll be a rage retreat with a lot of details coming up over the next month and a half. That will be in spring 2026. There is also a Decolonizing Therapy course that is self-guided, that is a support to the book that's going to be coming out. And on the heels, also an Unlearning Institute, like where you go to unlearn all the shit that your education system has put in you. That's what we're building out and creating. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, this is the end of our recording, but is there any final remarks that you want to add before I hit end recording, or does that feel like a good closing to you?
That feels like a good closing. Thank you.
Okay. Ending recording now.